Hello fellow tankers and friends of a cultivated keyboard destruction, a new season Onslaught has begun, and in this video I would like to briefly summarize what it is actually about and why it might be worth giving this mode a try. The first thing to mention is that Onslaught is the successor mode to ranked battles. In these battles you could prove your skills and, depending on your performance, reach certain ranks in order to receive rewards at the end of a season, and to flex with special camouflages and badges and rub everyone's noses in the fact that you were a good player. The ranked battles were first 15 vs 15 battles, later 10 vs 10 on certain maps. For most of the time you could also play reward tanks like the Fair and Balanced Chieftain there. In the end, good players who earned these tanks, or in some cases bought them from other people who earned them for them, had a certain advantage over the already average playing masses. Presumably because too few people ultimately played the mode, Wargaming released the Onslaught mode last year, which is now also intended to replace and continue the ranked battles and their competitive claim. But how does Onslaught work? In short, you fight against each other in a 7 vs 7 format on slightly adjusted maps, and whoever performs well in the battle according to parameters that Wargaming doesn't really publish or explain transparently is either rewarded with points if he is on the winning team, or has points deducted if he is on the losing team. At the end of the day, it's all about damage, kills, and most importantly, winning the battle. In addition, there are special skills, as you might know from the game of League of Legends or similar games, which are assigned to each tank. These did not exist in ranked battles, and they do not seem to be really balanced either. Also, you can try to conquer certain places on the map, which give you an advantage in terms of spotting the enemy or placing an artillery strike. This means that the players are particularly unfriendly and frustrated, because of course no one wants to lose and you go downhill the ranks. In contrast to ranked battles, it is possible to play in a 2-man or 7-man platoon. As a 7-player platoon, of course, you fight against another 7-player platoon, and as a 2-player platoon, the opposing team will also involve a 2-player platoon. Self-propelled guns have finally been banned from Onslaught because their influence on the battlefield was ridiculously low, which was a big difference to the old ranked battles with 15 vs 15, where the queue was always filled with RD players because they had an extreme advantage due to the unfair calculation of battle XP and are easy to play compared to the other classes. The whole affair usually involves burning a lot of credits, shooting only premium ammunition, and spending a lot of time, as you have to work your way up several ranks if you want to get all the rewards. But what are these rewards for which we end up bashing each other's heads in for weeks? Wargaming tries to provide several things. Depending on your rank, you get one or more 2-day camouflages, which you can decorate with coats of arms, words, and numbers. Whether it's worth it for this aesthetic factor is something everyone has to decide for themselves. Personally, I don't think any of the silver and champion camouflages are really visually bearable. In my opinion, it's particularly ridiculous that the gold camouflage looks almost exactly like the silver camouflage. Dog marks and badges are also added, but while the dog marks are just ugly as fuck in my opinion, the badges are actually unattainable for the average player. Champion and Legend are dynamic ranks that depend on the number of event points you receive. If you can maintain this rank, you can receive 25 bonds per day in Champion and 50 bonds per day in Legend. But this should really only affect the fewest players. So for this alone, Wargaming would probably only lure few players out from behind the stove. They came up with something more meaningful for that. Lucky chips. Whoever is in charge of a corresponding department for virtual currencies really doesn't have any ideas anymore. If you complete a series of in-game missions every week, which are relatively easy to do, you get a chip for each completed series. A total of 6 chips are possible for this season. For the first one you get 3 days premium time, for the third you get 500 bonds and 5 times credit booster, for the fifth 1000 bonds and a crew book with 250,000 XP, and if you also earn the last chip you get a bond hardening and a useless Onslaught camouflage of the ones you have unlocked. These are rewards for the first season, which runs from September the 6th until October the 16th. There will be 3 seasons in total, each with different colors for the camouflage. Whether the weekly rewards will change in other seasons remains to be seen. If you actually play all 3 seasons, you get even more rewards. For each rank you get a blue square, this bullshit is called the Pegasus color by Wargaming. If you get 3 bronze, you get a bond equipment that you can choose yourself, and of course a useless camouflage and medals that no one ever looks at. If you achieve 3 silver medals, you will receive 2 additional bond equipments, a camouflage and another medal in addition to the bronze bond reward. So in the end you get 3 bond equipments, 2 camouflage and 1 medal. For 3 times gold you even get a tier 10 tank with a 0 skill crew, but this will probably only be an additional CS63 with an 3D style. If you become a champion 3 times, you will also get 3 additional bond equipments. Everything else in legendary rank is just decoration. So it's not really worth it for the rewards in my opinion to become a legend, the highest rank. Also you can only choose one type of bond equipment, and then it looks like that the certain type of bond equipment is not choosable anymore. So all in all, depending on how you look at it, you can take 6 times bond equipment and 1 tier 10 tank, which is probably already in the tech tree. Well, whether that's worth the effort is something everyone has to decide for themselves. But weekly missions are easy and bonds are never a bad thing. This would be also my recommendation, as the grind can be really frustrating if you aim for a certain rank. Another problem with Onslaught, as in ranked battles back then, is that if you don't play in the now possible 7-player platoon, you have to play together with relatively random players. This alone can sometimes drag you into a huge maelstrom of defeat, as you simply cannot compensate for the 5 or 6 other players in a single-player or 2-player platoon, and only wins can get you ahead. Let's say you are a very good player with a win rate of around 60%. Yes, even the best players do not have a higher win rate in high tier than around 60 to 65% with a few exceptions. This means that even as a very good player you would only have won 60 battles after 100 fights. Because of a calculation for the ranks, you need a certain number of points that you can accumulate through victories. So if you play so badly in the defeats that you lose more than you collect in the victories, you would still fall in the ranks. What a nonsense, and on top of that, Wargaming sets the bar very high here. So the total number of champion and master points you need goes up and up the longer the event lasts. So assuming you get 1 point for every victory and lose 1 point for every defeat, you would have 20 points after 100 fights and a 60% win rate. But if Wargaming now sets the bar, for example, so that you need 100 points for a gold rank, you would have to play 5 times as many battles, which means 500 battles of Onslaught. So the ranks are set pretty arbitrarily in my opinion. In the end, you have to ask yourself whether a really competitive mode is possible at all in World of Tanks. For a halfway meaningful comparability, I think everyone would have to play the same tank on a mirrored map, with the same crew, the same ammunition, and the same consumables. And even then, it still depends to some extent on chance whether you hit and penetrate at all. The special skills of the vehicles ultimately completely take away the competitive comparability of the mode. I find 7 vs 7 an interesting change and the rewards are nice to have, but as a really competitive mode in which players want to measure their skills, the event is only of limited use. In the end, the frustration factor is enormous, the time needed to reach higher rank is disproportionate to the rewards, and without a premium account you also burn a lot of credits. Probably the only reason why Wargaming developed this mode in the first place. Within 5 minutes of fencing, you can burn twice as many credits as in randoms. This brings joy to free-to-play players, who I would say represent the mass of a player base. In the end, you could keep the 7 vs 7 mode, but why not just make it dependent on damage or XP, how quickly you get the rewards. Someone who earns a lot of damage and a lot of base XP could only need 1 week, and a player who is not so good would have to sit down and grind for a longer time if he wants the rewards. This way, the very strong players would finish quickly and the weaker players would actually compete with similarly strong competitors. The camouflage for ranks, which ultimately depend on the win rate, could be retained. A difficult topic on which there are many different opinions. Please let me know in the comments what you think of Onslaught and if you want to discuss if a truly competitive mode could be recreated in World of Tanks. I will play Onslaught for the lucky chips and their rewards. Realistically, I think it would be possible for me to reach this silver rank. If it becomes clear that it is possible for me without extreme extra effort, I will of course try to take the additional bond equipment with me. I'll be happy to share the Onslaught grind with you and plan to upload my daily grind to YouTube with commentary. There will be certainly a lot of funny and questionable actions there. I hope you'll be back next time, and I'd like to thank my 4 subscribers, who I'm very happy about and to whom I'd like to dedicate this video. Good luck on the battlefield and with Onslaught. Until next time, thank you and cheers bros.